Welcome. This is a video about the older Birlings in An Inspector Calls, but I want you to think about people who strive for power in general. I want you to think about rich people who want to control the lives of poorer people. I want you to think about Trump. I want you to think about Elon Musk. These are people who make decisions that genuinely affect people's lives. They speak as if they know everything about the world and how it should work, and are happy to change the lives of people with the stroke of a pen or the click of a keyboard. These are exactly the kind of people that Priestley, pipe-smoking, avuncular socialist that he was trying to warn people about. I'm going to show you how he presents Arthur and Sybil Birling as symbols of a ruling class that is complacent, arrogant, and ignorant. These are the upper classes, the industrialists of the early 20th century Britain. These are the people that Priestley is afraid will worm their way back into power, controlling the lives of ordinary working people with little care for anything other than themselves. As Birling himself says, a man has to make his own way, has to look after himself, and his family too, of course. Born poor, make your own way. Been sacked, boo-hoo. Tough times, tough luck. Work in a department that I see no value in, gone. That kind of selfish, tough love will always have a political audience. Trump knows this, but so does Priestley. And he wants us to see that in the Birlings. So he needs to critique these arrogant people and show the audience in 1945 that they need to be wary, just as a modern audience needs to be wary, because the Birlings and people just like them are irrelevant and harmful to modern society. Now, it'd be easy to go straight to a quotation that shows how Birling represents capitalism, and he does, but I want to show how unreliable the ruling classes are. So I'm thinking about the most obvious example of Priestley showing Birling's values and ideas as completely wrong. So for me, this is when he says the Titanic is unsinkable, absolutely unsinkable. If we consider what we know about the character from this, we can see that Mr. Birling has a deep-seated confidence in his own knowledge of how the world works. He's his own expert. To him, the Titanic is patently invincible. But we know that Priestley is really using dramatic irony. This is where the audience knows more than the character. So how does the technique actually work? It works by creating a contrast between Mr. Birling's confident assertion and the audience's knowledge of the actual events. We know that the Titanic did indeed sink, along with the death of about 1,500 people. This dramatic irony serves to highlight Mr. Birling's ignorance and the flawed nature of his beliefs. It underscores the theme of complacency and the dangers of overconfidence, as Mr. Birling's certainty is proven disastrously wrong. But why does Priestley use this? Well, dramatic irony is useful because it gets the audience on side with the writer. Here's a secret. I know it, you know it, but these guys don't. We're being brought on side by this technique. Priestley is influencing us. In this case, we now know that if we're rebuilding Britain after the Second World War, or now for that matter, we will come across people with power, people with money, people who control aspects of our lives, and they will sound knowledgeable, speaking from experience, speaking from a position higher than us. This is arrogance, because ultimately they know nothing. They're wrong. Now, look at the choice that Priestley made. Why the Titanic? Because it leads to the death of 1,500 people. And guess what? The richer you were, the more likely you were to survive the Titanic. So the Titanic becomes a symbol of suffering for the working class. And we see that Priestley is suggesting that the ruling classes are irrelevant and harmful in modern society, particularly for the poorer people. We can do exactly the same with another quotation. Birling goes on to say, "The Germans don't want war." What do we know about the character from this? Well, Mr. Birling is again asserting his belief as fact, and we can see that Mr. Birling has a deep-seated confidence in his own knowledge of how the world works. But of course, he's wrong. So how does the dramatic irony actually work? Again, it works by creating a contrast between Mr. Birling's assertions and our knowledge. We know, and the 1945 audience knew, that there have been 2 world wars, and the First World War led to the ruling classes ordering the pointless deaths of thousands of working class men. Over 400,000 soldiers died in just the Battle of the Somme, and over 200,000 Frenchmen. And in 1945, people are still trying to work out how many Jews have been killed by the Nazis. So this builds up a picture of Mr. Birling representing not an individual, but a ruling class as deeply conceited and arrogant beyond foolishness. The scale of the tragedies, the fire and blood and anguish that the inspector is warning of, it's too great for people like this to ever be in charge again. This kind of ruling class is irrelevant and dangerous, despite what they will tell you. Now, ruling classes are all about maintaining control. For Trump and for Musk, this is about controlling the media and the message. So they buy up businesses and they control who can be in a press conference and what other people can say publicly. They use social media to push their agendas. The Birlings haven't got the option of social media, but the messaging is really important. So Priestley has him reference a scandal several times, expressing fear of a public scandal. What do we know about the character from this? Well, we know that he fears damage to his reputation and his potential knighthood. This would represent a loss of control because he would lose his influence in society. Note that it's always a public scandal that he's worried about, because a private scandal is absolutely fine because that can be swept under the carpet. We've explored Arthur Birling quite a bit, so let's think about the control Mrs. Birling exerts over society and see if we can't work out what she represents. Let's go back to our old friend dramatic irony, because Priestley wants us to react a certain way to this character. The best example is when she says, "I blame the father. He should be made an example of." What do we know about the character from this? Well, she confidently blames an unknown man without considering her own family's involvement. This shows her arrogance, but it also emphasizes her lack of responsibility. She is very happy to judge others, but refuses to consider any of her own faults. Sybil Birling is so unaware that her own son Eric is the father of Eva Smith's unborn child. We know he must be, because we're smart individuals and we know that everyone else has been interviewed, so who else could it be? But Priestley goes belt and braces on this by making sure that even the characters on stage, at least Sheila, know who the father is, and she tries to stop her mother from digging the hole any further. So he's raising the tempo and the sense of dramatic irony in the scene, cementing our distaste for everything the elder Birlings stand for, while simultaneously aligning us, the audience or reader, with Sheila, because she's smarter and she's capable of change. Let's just explore one more way that Priestley uses the character of Mrs. Birling to show how those in power not only try to maintain their power over people, but are needlessly malicious and nasty with their power. When Eva Smith comes to her for help as a pregnant woman, afraid that the father of her child is committing crimes, to give her money, she's rejected. We don't get to hear the rejection. Eva Smith has no voice in this play. The working class have no voice in this play. Instead, we hear Sybil's excuses. She says, "I wasn't satisfied with the girl's claim. She seemed to me not to be a good case, and so I used my influence to have it refused." What do we know about the character from this? This shows that Mrs. Birling abuses her authority to deny help rather than making a fair decision. She treats the charity, therefore, as a tool for maintaining social division rather than offering assistance. She makes a personal judgment rather than an objective one. This shows us that bias and a lack of genuine compassion are core attributes to her personality. She believes that her opinion is the final word, reinforcing a sense of arrogance around her and her need for control. The final irony is that those people that make Eva Smith the symbol of the working class, the ones that make her poor, the poor unfortunate girl she is, are the same people who get to decide if she's worthy of help. The ruling class make you poor and then deem you unworthy. Or you have to go back to them, cap in hand, and ask for charity. Just as people like Musk and Trump will make thousands of people unemployed and deny them help, they are only ever happy to give handouts to the already wealthy. But don't forget what Mrs. Birling is also doing. She is killing her own grandchild. Her cruelty, her unnecessary cruelty, built on arrogance and a need to maintain an order where she still has status, is ultimately a long-term act of self-harm. And that's why Priestley puts her in the play. People like these will destroy a country. He's telling us to remain vigilant against those people who seek control and manipulate everybody for their own gain. He's telling us they're not better than us. They just happen to be richer. Don't give them the keys to the kingdom. Hope that was useful. If it was, please subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again here soon.